Welcome to the David Pakman Show. I am Farron Cousins from Ring of Fire with you once again to help close out what has been quite a crazy week, to put it mildly. So, without further ado, right, let's just jump right into today's story. No need to waste time. Let's get to it. Big story happened this week. The FBI raided the homes of two individuals involved in Donald Trump's fake elector scheme. Those two individuals, Brad Carver, who allegedly signed a document to be a Trump elector, as well as Thomas Lane, who worked on Trump's effort to overturn the election in Arizona and New Mexico. Now, as everybody I'm sure is aware, the DOJ is in fact investigating the fake elector scheme. It's one of the few things from the former Trump administration that is actually being investigated, along with, of course, the 15 boxes of documents that were found down at Mar-a-Lago. The DOJ is also investigating that. With regard to January 6th, though, not so much. We get more to that in just a little bit. But this is a big one, right? We got a fake elector. We got a guy running Donald Trump's, day-to-day campaign operations. The FBI raided their homes, has seized some of their electronic devices. And on top of that, other people also involved in the scheme have received subpoenas. So here is what this means so far for this investigation. It just means that it's moving forward. I know that's a little disappointing. I know nobody ever just wants to hear that the wheels are in motion, right? We want action. We want meat. We want something of substance that we can really sink our teeth into and feel better about these, kind of slow rolling investigations, which, let's be clear, that is what this is. I saw a great analysis from a writer this week that basically said the DOJ is moving too slowly on this particular story, considering the fact that this fake elector scheme didn't just emerge on Tuesday during those hearings. We've known about it for over a year. And we're just now getting to the point where, okay, well, these are the fake electors. Now, let's go look in their homes. Let's get their electronic devices. Let's really start to ramp things up a little bit, I guess, whatever it is. It is too slow. But sometimes, it's slow for a reason. Other times, it's slow out of abundance of caution. And I'm afraid that that is the situation that we are looking at right now. The DOJ, led by, of course, Attorney General Merrick Garland, doesn't want to give any kind of appearance that they are being overtly political. They want to make sure that they have crossed their T's and dotted their I's before they make any moves on anyone, even some of these low-level individuals. But even still, sometimes when you have the evidence, you don't need to sit on it. You don't need to wait. You don't need to hold off on issuing subpoenas until the public is squarely in your corner. Sometimes you have to do something even if it's unpopular, if it is the right thing to do. And I do believe that that, of course, is the situation that we're looking at right now with the fake elector scheme. I mean, after all, that is one of the biggest things. Obviously, there is so much with January 6th and with the January 6th committee and all of that we could probably pop a lot of people for a lot of different crimes right away, Trump himself included. And again, I'm going to get to that in just a few moments. But this fake elector scheme, this was the big gambit, right? They knew that their court cases were losing. They knew they didn't have evidence of voter fraud. But they pushed ahead with all of this anyway. And in some states, they had people ready to go. In Michigan, we found out this week that their fake elector scheme, because the electors had to be in the state capitol to cast their votes, so what they had planned, which of course didn't come to fruition, but they had planned to somehow sneak into the Michigan state capitol so that they would be present the following day to be able to cast their fake electoral college vote. I mean, that is how deep this scheme went. I mean, this truly is, cross country, north to south, east to west, all over the country. You had these little fake electors willing to do whatever it took to make Donald Trump the winner of the election. So thank goodness, of course, that we do have the DOJ investigating this. Thank goodness we're seeing some of these positive step forward. Individuals do need to be subpoenaed. They do need to, if they're not going to comply, if we think they might hide or destroy evidence, they do have to be raided. That's how that works. That's why, by the way, that typically works in that manner. If you have an individual you think could destroy evidence, could be hiding things, that's when you send the FBI in to go try to find it. Now, over in Georgia as well, the fake elector scheme has been gaining steam. And we have seen in recent weeks several of the people who signed on to be the fake electors, not, of course, necessarily in a criminal way. And what I mean by that is you do have some of the people who were the, quote, fake electors in Georgia that are fully cooperating with the investigators because they said, listen, I was approached with this and they said, if these court cases overturn everything for Donald Trump, we're going to need our electors. Are you willing to do that? And so you had plenty of people in the state of Georgia, these Republicans, who said, oh, yeah, I'll do it if, and only if these court cases overturn the election. I'm here ready to go. And then once the court case is lost, these people said, all right, I'm out. I'm not going to do this. And those people have been working with these investigators, both in Georgia and the feds. And more importantly, they've been giving them names. They said, listen, I'm more than willing to talk to you, but I'm probably not the guy you need. You need, this person, and this person. The names have not been released. So they are getting better leads. And the more leads you get, the longer the investigation takes. The more people you have to question, the more people you have to subpoena. And of course, you have to go to the courts to get the subpoenas. So maybe it's being slow rolled out of that abundance of caution, which I do believe is the driving factor. But it also could be that there's just so many different leads, so many different states, so many different players, that this investigation kind of has to go slow because you don't want to miss anyone. And sometimes in our impatience, and I'll admit I'm probably public enemy number one on that, sometimes we forget about that. We all want this kind of instant gratification with these investigations. And unfortunately, that's just not the way it works. So we do have to be patient. We do have to let the process play itself out because there are far too many players here for us to even omit, ignore, or forget a single one of them. Having said that, I want to talk a little bit more about my impatience, because I do have a lot of impatience right now. And nearly all of it is directed at Attorney General Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland, as AG, as the top law enforcement official here in the United States, has so far not gone after Donald Trump in any kind of meaningful way. Sure, the fake elector investigation is obviously leading up to Trump. It has to. I mean, he's the guy at the top of it. But we have had plenty of people, including those serving on the January 6th committee, by the way. So this isn't just me being impatient. This is also people on the committee saying, hi, we've got all of this wonderful material for you. Could you do something? And what has been Merrick Garland's response? Well, as he told us last week, I'm watching the hearings. I'm watching them. We're paying attention. So the Attorney General of the United States is out there telling us, don't worry, folks. I'm tuning in to CNN every day, just like you. No, that's not good, Merrick. I don't want you to be learning this stuff the same way that I am. Okay, again, you're the Attorney General. You should probably, maybe be present in the room. I mean, I'm sure they'd be willing to give you a pass to go sit in the room while they're doing the hearings. And if not, you probably know somebody that could get you one. We don't want the Attorney General to sit there and say, don't worry, folks, I'm watching TV just like the rest of you. Well, that's wonderful if we're talking about the season of Miss Marvel that's currently on, but we're talking about the January 6th committee hearings. You should already know what's happening. There should be sharing of information. Maybe that's on Garland, maybe that's on the committee. But the bottom line is that they have already, and the judges, of course, have confirmed this, and we've talked about it. I know David's talked about it. Everybody's talked about it. The judges who've looked at this have already said there's evidence of criminal behavior here right now. Right now. We have it. We've got it. But Merrick Garland so far has not opened up a single investigation into Donald Trump himself for his actions here. And that is forever frustrating. And to me, there's no excuse for that. No excuse. The January 6th committee is only going to be able to continue doing their job for a couple more months. Eventually, they will have to kind of put it on pause so they can all go and campaign. I mean, they're in the House. They all have to campaign except for the folks that aren't running anymore, and they're leaving after this, so they're gone anyway. And Republicans, unfortunately, are poised to take back over the House of Representatives. They've made it clear. They do that, committee's over with. So what Garland should do, and I know I pitched this, I think the last time I guest hosted on David's show here back in December, but Merrick Garland should have already appointed a special prosecutor. That's all you need. You give them the time, you give them the budget, you give them the funds, you give them whatever they need, but most importantly, you give it time. Because the January 6th committee does not have time. The January 6th committee has wasted so much time having to go to court to battle these people who don't want to comply with the subpoenas. A special prosecutor wouldn't have that problem, right? A grand jury wouldn't have that problem. It would be so much easier for a special prosecutor to be appointed by Merrick Garland to walk into that January 6th committee and say, listen, you guys have done phenomenal work. I'm going to take it from here. Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for everything you've given us. But I've got this, don't worry. And in fact, appoint 2 or 3 special prosecutors. There's a bunch of different avenues, bunch of different schemes that do need to be investigated, and it'd be great to have a separate person on each and every one of them. Folks, I've been screaming about that for 8-9 months now, and we still haven't gotten it. And the only person standing in the way of that is, of course, unfortunately, the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland. We cannot have any forward progress without his say-so. And finally, real quick here, I do want to mention one other story that happened this week because I found this just absolutely fascinating. And that is, of course, the fact that Mo Brooks, the now lame duck Republican member of Congress because he lost his runoff election this week to Katie Britt, came out shortly after losing that election and said, you know what? I think I'm ready to sit down with the January 6th committee now. Now, he had previously been subpoenaed. However, he had not been served his subpoena because he was back home and campaigning, trying to win the race that he ultimately lost. But the timing of that sure is interesting, isn't it? Now that the dust has settled, now that he knows his political career is at least at a temporary end, now he says, I'll go ahead and talk to you. Now, of course, he does have some stipulations. Here's what he says. He says, my basic requirement is it be in public so the public can see it, so they don't get bits and pieces dribbled out. Fine. I'm good with that. He also wants to see the material they have on him and the questions that they're going to be asking ahead of time. Okay. I'll give you that as well. But I do not think it is a coincidence that he has finally agreed to talk to this committee that, of course, is clearly going after Donald Trump after he lost his election, possibly because Donald Trump pulled his endorsement from him. I think Mo Brooks is out for revenge. And I think Mo Brooks understands that the best way to get that revenge on Donald Trump is to go sit down with that committee and tell them everything they know. Mo Brooks, of course, as everybody remembers, is the guy that wore the bulletproof vest to go speak at the Stop the Steal rally. It has also been reported, he says it's not true, but it has been reported that members of his staff were actually working with the Stop the Steal organizers to help put the whole thing together. So Mo Brooks has some things to tell. There's no doubt about that. Mo Brooks has some stories to tell. And I hope that he gets the chance to tell them. Now, ordinarily, I would not be in favor of the committee giving in to his demands, right? You've subpoenaed him. You don't have to give in to anything. But if it means getting dirt on Trump that we otherwise might not get because Brooks wants to challenge it in court or whatever he may choose to do, I say give in. Put him on TV, put it back in prime time, and let everybody hear what little Mo Brooks has to say about Donald Trump, the man who screwed him over in his quest to be a United States Senator. We have to take a quick break, but you can get more from me on my YouTube channels. Check me out at youtube.com/TheRingOfFire and youtube.com/FarronBalanced. I'm Farron Cousins, in for David Pakman, and we'll be back with more.
Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com and use the coupon code BETTER21 for a huge discount. Joinpakman.com.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. I am Farron Cousins from Ring of Fire, sitting in for David today. And if you want, you can follow me across social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm at Farron Balanced. I would appreciate any follows you may throw my way. But until then, let's get back to some more of the biggest stories of this week. And one of the more grotesque things that we saw happen this week, in addition to Marjorie Taylor Greene's week-long meltdown, she took a minor break from that to tell a British reporter, "Go back to your country." Now, we have the clip I'm going to show you in just a minute, but before I do, let me go ahead and set up the, set the stage for you, if I might. What happened here is that Republicans in the Senate worked with the Democrats. They came up with their bipartisan gun control legislation. Long overdue, decades overdue, really. And finally we got it. Not quite as strong as we needed it, but hey, we got something. And sometimes you got to celebrate even the smallest victories. Even if it's not what you wanted, you got to take the wins when you can get them. But Marjorie Taylor Greene was angry. Angry, my friends, angry that those Senate Republicans dared to join with those Democrats and take away your guns, as she says. So she holds a press conference with a couple of other weirdos from Congress, including, of course, Lauren Boebert, Thomas Massie, and Andrew Clyde, when she was confronted by a British reporter, and then this exchange took place. Here it is.
And it's our job to defend the Second Amendment.
Yeah, I understand that we don't have guns in the UK, that is true, but we don't have mass shootings either. Children aren't scared to go to
You
school.
have mass stabbings, lady. You have all kinds of murder, and you've got laws against
nothing
that.
Like the same rates.
Well,
here.
you can go back to your country and worry about your no guns.
That's very kind
We
of
like
you.
ours here.
Go back to your country. You have mass stabbings, lady. Okay, but not really. Certainly not at the level that we see mass shootings here in the United States. Even before we had the big string of mass shootings taking place in America in May, even before that, statistics already showed us that we were averaging here in this country 10 mass shootings per week, little more than one per day. And that, of course, is a mass shooting defined as any single shooter event in which 4 or more people are shot. More than one per day here in the United States. Great Britain is not suffering a mass stabbing every day. I don't even know if they're suffering a mass stabbing every, 4 months, as Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to make it seem. The homicide rate here in the United States is 4 times higher than over in Great Britain. 4 times higher. And 80% of those homicides Guns. That's what's killing people 80% of the time here in the United States when some person kills another one. Guns. That's the difference. Mass stabbings are not something that people in the United Kingdom walk around terrified of every single day. Versus here in the United States, you're not safe in a grocery store. Our kids aren't safe in school. You're not safe in a house of worship. You're not safe at a music festival. You're not safe at a mall. You're not safe walking down the street. You're not safe. Plain and simple, you're not safe here in the United States from gun violence. It doesn't matter where you are, where you live, red state, blue state. Yes, some states do have higher rates, of course. But you go over to the UK, you don't see people cowering in fear all the time. You don't see them out there saying, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a knife is a good guy with a knife. They don't come up with those idiotic talking points. But we do here in the United States, partly because we have elected officials like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who rather than address the facts, rather than acknowledge that this is a uniquely American phenomenon, because it is, she would rather insult that reporter telling her, go back to your country. I mean, we have seen, obviously, these hardcore hate mongers across the United States, I mean, for centuries, telling people, go back to your country. But here we have, in the year 2022, an elected member of Congress telling another human being, go back to your country. Are we even redeemable as a society? Are we redeemable as a country if this is what we've got representing us? This is now the global face of the United States, and it really is. You know, I get emails, I get comments, I get all kinds of things from people all over the world that talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene, that talk about Lauren Boebert or Matt Gaetz or, of course, Donald Trump. The rest of the world does see these things. And this is the face that we put forward. And I know this is just one individual from a tiny little county in Georgia who has somehow become the crazy global face of what the United States is all about. And it all goes back to comments like that, telling a reporter, go back to your country. And while we're on the subject of guns, we obviously have a big one this week. The United States Supreme Court, in addition to curtailing Miranda rights here in the United States, saying that you can no longer sue police officers for violating your Miranda rights, which basically means they don't exist anymore, they also issued a 6-3 ruling along party lines, which is how every ruling is going to be, I guess, from now on, striking down a New York State concealed carry law. And here's what this law did. This law said that you could only get a concealed carry permit in the state of New York if you were able to show a need to have a concealed gun on you at all times. Well, gun rights advocates sued. This legislation, by the way, has been in place for decades upon decades upon decades. I think almost 100 years. And the Supreme Court says, you know what, you're right. There are no limits on the Second Amendment. So you can't tell people that they have to have a reason to need a concealed carry permit. Nope, let's take it back to the Wild Wild West, which the Wild Wild West, by the way, technically wasn't even like that. They actually had strict gun control laws. It's just an expression that we use too many times. I do as well. That really isn't even rooted in reality. But that's what the Supreme Court said this week. Here's the thing. Most states allow for concealed carry. The issue is you have to have the permit. And of course, the Supreme Court, in their majority opinion, did say we're not taking away the permit requirements. All we're doing is taking away the requirement for people who can even apply for a permit. So initially, obviously, when this ruling came down, a lot of, I don't want to call it overreaction because we don't want more guns in the streets. More guns statistically means more death. We know that. That is the truth. But it's not quite as devastating, I think, as everybody is kind of portraying it to be. Because again, New York State can still say, okay, you have to have a concealed carry permit. We have to know everybody that is walking around carrying a gun. You have to apply for it. You have to pass the background checks, the fingerprint checks. You have to, make it past the red flag laws. If you do all of that, then you can have your concealed carry. And even the conservatives on the Supreme Court said that's okay. We're not taking that away. So I guess that's a positive. I guess it's not as horrible, but it's still pretty frickin' horrible. But this is what they do. This is what this extremist right-wing Supreme Court does. No more Miranda rights, no more Roe, and guns everywhere. That's the United States of America in 2022. But there's also plenty of room, by the way, for hate. Good old-fashioned bigotry as well. And you want to find it, you need look no further, of course, than the modern Republican Party. This week, Republican Senator Roger Marshall from the state of Kansas announced that he's contemplating blocking an effort, a bipartisan effort in the Senate to fund school lunch programs across the United States because he's worried the Biden administration might use this as an opportunity to not let states discriminate against LGBTQ youth. Let me read his statement as to why he's currently on the fence about feeding kids lunches at school. Here he is. I'm just afraid that schools in Kansas won't have school lunches because of this administration's radical view on transgender issues. And I'm afraid that they're going to raid the school lunch program over that issue. Now, seems a little confusing, I understand. Here is what this idiot is confusing. Mr. Marshall, Senator Marshall, I'll give him that title, Senator Marshall, believes that the USDA's guidance on who can receive funding, which is, of course, you got to make sure you do not allow discrimination and bullying of LGBTQ youth in your school. If you do that, if we find out you are in violation, we will take away your money, the USDA says, but only if you're receiving federal money for nutritional programs. It does not apply to the school lunch program. So Senator Marshall isn't even talking about the right thing. But it doesn't matter, right? He didn't take the 5 seconds that it would take to understand that he has confused two completely separate issues. All he knows is, hey, schools in Kansas may be bullying LGBTQ kids and we don't want to lose our lunches, so nobody gets a lunch. You're going to tank this whole effort, a bipartisan effort, by the way, that they're trying to ram through quickly, which is why you only need one objection to stall it. They're trying to ram it through before June 30th when the funding for the current program expires. So Senator Marshall, I guess, would rather see all kids go hungry than have to see school districts not allow LGBTQ youth to be bullied in school. Right? Let's just make everybody go hungry because we want to see kids get bullied. And again, it's all actually because he doesn't even understand that he has confused two completely separate issues. What a party, right? Listen, we got to take another quick break, but if you want even more from me, follow me across social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, @FarronBalanced. And you can find me on my YouTube channels at youtube.com/TheRingOfFire, youtube.com/FairAndBalanced. I'm also the host of the weekly Ring of Fire podcast, which you can find online at rofpodcast.com. This is The David Pakman Show, and we'll be right back with more.
If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the Daily Bonus Show, the commercial-free Daily Show, as well as special discounts on merch, including hats, hoodies, mugs, and t-shirts. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show.
Welcome back to The David Pakman Show. I am Farron Cousins from Ring of Fire, once again filling in for David. You know, one of the things that we have talked about a lot with regard to the January 6th hearing is whether or not any of these televised hearings are going to have any kind of impact on the 2022 midterm elections. And according to former Tea Party Republican Joe Walsh, who tweeted out on Thursday, no, they will have absolutely no impact. Here is Joe Walsh's tweet. Twitter world may not understand this, but January 6th and these hearings won't make any difference in the midterms. The hearings are important and necessary, but they'll have zero impact this November. It's kind of a bummer, right? I mean, way to come along and ruin everybody's mood there, Captain Buzzkill. But at the same time, I don't completely disagree with him. I do think, for the most part, and I'm struggling to say that because I don't know how much I believe him or agree with him, but I do think he's right. If these things do end up having an impact on the 2022 midterms, I don't think it's going to be a hugely measurable impact, right? It may affect like a couple races, but I don't think it's going to affect enough of them to stop what we all see as likely coming, which of course is Republicans taking back the House. I don't see it doing that. I don't see enough momentum with this. I don't see enough, tying it into the other Republicans, because the hearings, of course, are all really about Donald Trump and his administration. Yes, we've identified several Republican members of Congress that were involved. But even if we took out each and every one of those people in the elections, Republicans would still be poised to take back the House. So that is why I do, again, kind of agree with what Joe Walsh has to say. But then the other but is the poll numbers, right? The poll numbers out there are kind of contradicting it, at least right now. Here's what they tell us. Nearly 2/3 of U.S. adults believe the January 6, 2021 riot at the Capitol was planned, according to a new Quinnipiac poll. Poll found that 64% of respondents believed the attack was planned and 30% believed it was spontaneous. Okay, so it's influencing public opinion, which is great. I mean, that's the whole point of all of this. We want to influence public opinion, but not because we're trying to brainwash them or, push them into any kind of political ideology, but because we want to influence their opinion on the people who perpetrated these acts. And there is a big difference between those two. This is not a partisan political committee as the Republicans would like to have you believe. This is, in fact, a fact-finding mission. And so far, a lot of the facts that they found have been very bad for the Republican Party. So the question is, could it have an impact on the 2022 midterms in a meaningful way? And the answer is possibly. In order, however, for that to happen, the committee's work would have to focus more on the Republican Party as a whole. Not just paint Donald Trump and Giuliani and some of these other weird little characters out there as, the only people. They would have to come back in and tie it all in, saying this, folks, is who the current Republican Party is. And that's not the job of the committee. That's the job of the Democratic Party. And that's where that disconnect exists. The January 6th committee has done great work. I was skeptical of them at first, didn't think they could pull it off. They have proven me wrong, and I am grateful to them for it. But now is the time for the Democratic Party to step up. Because yes, these hearings are impactful. Yes, they are changing public opinion. But the committee is not going to sit there, especially with Republican like Liz Cheney sitting on there, and say, this is who all Republicans are. They're not going to do that. And they shouldn't do that either. They kind of should, but they can't. I understand they absolutely cannot, because you will start to turn off people. What the Democratic Party could do, should have already been doing, is turning some of this into ads. Ads running on national television channels all across the country. But they're not. The messaging from the Democratic Party needs to be that this is who the Republicans are. Not this is who Trump is. Not this is who Jim Jordan is. This is who they all are. Every one of them. Yes, use that language. Yes, I don't care if it makes Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger sitting on that committee angry. This is your opportunity. The public is paying attention to these hearings. Millions of people have already tuned in. The polls are shifting in pretty significant ways. I mean, rather shocking ways, if you ask me. So seize that moment, jump on that opportunity, and put it in ads. Put it in people's faces every day. Tie every single Republican candidate out there back to these people. Because even if they didn't participate, they still vote with them. Hell, a lot of the candidates out there running for office actually support what happened that day. They still support Donald Trump. That's why you do have candidates, by the way, like Dr. Oz, who have now shifted their messaging to stop mentioning Trump as much and, moving back on to just the issues, folks. Don't let them do that. Don't let them get the upper hand. Tie every Republican in the country to everything this committee has found. You do that, you may have a pretty significant impact on the midterms. But if the Democratic Party is sitting there waiting for the January 6th committee to do this themselves, it ain't going to happen. That is not the job of this committee. And if they attempted to do that, they're going to lose all the credibility that they have. This is on the Democratic Party. They could do this. They should do this. But if history is any indicator, they won't be doing that. But I'll tell you, as I said, the polls are shifting in pretty good ways, right? And one of the biggest things that we're seeing happening is that people are flocking away from Donald Trump as a result of this January 6th, the televised hearings and everything. And one of the people who is watching this happening and seeing how Republicans are reacting happens to be Republican pollster Frank Luntz. Now, Frank Luntz appeared on CNN yesterday. And on CNN, he was actually asked about an issue I talked about yesterday, Ron DeSantis beating Donald Trump in that new New Hampshire poll. And here is what Mr. Luntz had to say about that when asked if DeSantis is a threat to Trump. He said, quote, "It's more than a threat. The governor is proving that his approach and what he's trying to accomplish and what he has accomplished in Florida is more significant, and Republicans are now saying it's time to move on. There's now polling out that shows that Donald Trump is actually paying a price for what these hearings are showing." Now, saying that the Republican Party is ready to move on from Donald Trump based on one poll from University in New Hampshire with just a few hundred people in, I don't know that I'm willing to say that, hey, Donald Trump's out of the party, everybody's moving on. Nah, that's reading way too much into a single, way too early poll. However, he's not wrong about the other polls. Here's one of my favorite things. Prior to that very first televised hearing, 2/3 of people in this country did not believe that Donald Trump bore responsibility for what happened on January 6th. Today, 2/3 of people in this country believe that Donald Trump bears responsibility for what happened on January 6th. It literally flipped. It flipped in 2 weeks, folks. 2 weeks. That's pretty impressive, right? And that's the point. Like, that's how powerful these hearings are. That's why all of this matters. Not just because we want to change public opinion, mostly, obviously, because we want justice. We want those people who broke the law to pay the price. But I think we're all kidding ourselves if we don't admit to at least a small degree that there is some level of vengeance in us that feels good about this, that wants it to tank his approval rating, which it has. His approval rating, Donald Trump's, has gone down since these committee hearings began. That is, of course, what Frank Luntz is referring to. People are tying Donald Trump directly to this. And as I said, you've got Republican candidates. Dr. Oz is a great one. They're running away from him, even though Trump came out and backed him, made him. You know, had it not been for Trump, Oz probably wouldn't have won that primary. Same thing with J.D. Vance. I don't know if J.D. Vance is running away from the Trump messaging, but other people are. More and more candidates. And it's not because Donald Trump is still not an influential figure in the party. He is, and he will remain an influential figure in the party, whether they want him to or not. He's there to stay. He's your monster. You get to keep him forever. But the voters out there, they're not so happy with it. And we're going to start to see, I promise you, in the coming weeks, we're going to see more and more Republicans start to run away from him because, like Luntz said, it's having a real impact on Donald Trump. It may not be affecting the rest of the Republican Party, these hearings at least, but if they continue to try to tie themselves to Trump, it will come back to hurt them in the midterms. We need to take another quick break. I'm Farron Cousins from Ring of Fire, sitting in for David Pakman, and we'll be right back with more.
Follow us on social media. Interact with the David Pakman Show community. See exclusive content. See when we're taking calls live. And stay up to date on other big show announcements. We post daily. Find us on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and TikTok.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. I am Farron Cousins. I've been sitting in for David Pakman. And if you want more from me, you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/TheRingOfFire. I'm also at youtube.com/FarronBalanced. Let's get back into more of today's stories before we wrap up today's show. Now, Donald Trump has been out there publicly blaming Kevin McCarthy, House Minority Leader, for even allowing these gosh darn hearings to happen in the first place. And, according to reports coming out Thursday, it's actually Steve Bannon who has been whispering into Trump's ear that Kevin McCarthy is to blame for all of this. And as Trump this week has continued to blast McCarthy in statements and posts on his Truth Social, something rather extraordinary has actually happened in the House of Representatives on the Republican side. Suddenly, you have all of these pro-Trump Republicans that have been coming out and defending Kevin McCarthy. Now, before I get into their defenses, let's just mention real quick, one of Donald Trump's biggest gripes, of course, is that Kevin McCarthy allowed this to happen. He doesn't have any Republicans on the committee. He screwed up. All of this is a farce, and it's all Kevin McCarthy's fault. So, let me read some statements. First one is from Representative Kelly Armstrong of North Dakota, who says, Kevin made the only decision he could. What are we going to do? Allow them to just functionally silence entire constituencies? We don't get good hands all the time in the minority. Then Jim Jordan, who of course has actually been implicated in the scandal. Jim Jordan kicked off the committee by Nancy Pelosi, and obviously for very good reason. Jim Jordan says, let's say Kevin says, I'm going to give you new names. There would have been a problem there. I think she was always going to wind up here because she wanted the partisan show. Okay. What about Representative Elise Stefanik? What does she have to say? Well, she says, I do think Kevin has handled this appropriately, and the members support how we've handled this. Yikes. Now, typically, when Donald Trump comes out and attacks somebody, the rest of the Republican Party falls in line and they say, yeah, this guy's terrible. We don't like this woman either. Whoever it is he's attacking, they're going to go after him. But when you have people who, of course, are actually vying for Kevin McCarthy's spot as potentially the next Speaker of the House, people like Stefanik, people like Jim Jordan, who would love nothing more than to be Speaker of the House, they're coming out and defending him against the attacks being leveled at him by Donald Trump. That's a problem for Trump. It absolutely is. Your support among the House is clearly not as strong as you thought it was. And that's never a good thing for somebody in a position like Trump is in to have to find out the hard way. Now, of course, it could all be for show. Republicans right now have to basically put out this united front. They're getting lambasted by this committee. The whole party looks terrible. So maybe they're just trying to put on a brave face and try to stick together as long as they have to. And then after that, they're going to eat each other again. But publicly coming out and refuting what your big guy has to say, it's not a good look. And I don't know that Trump's going to be happy about it. And speaking of Republicans who are in a bit of trouble, how about Ron Johnson, right? Republican Senator Ron Johnson, of course, has been implicated directly in the fake Elector scheme. And he promised us on Thursday that, folks, it's a total nothing burger. This whole thing is overblown. What are y'all even talking about? Ron Johnson, of course, wants the whole thing to blow over because, as I said, he's implicated in the fake Elector scheme. He had his chief of staff reach out to Pence's staff, said Senator Johnson's got something he wants to hand deliver to Mike Pence. That hand delivery, of course, was the slate of fake electors from Wisconsin, possibly even Michigan, actually, as Johnson has now said too. So, oops, moron. But here is what he said. This is what is a statement he released on Thursday. We are piecing this together. You'll find out what a nothing burger this is. It's a complete non-story. It will all be clear and you'll never have to ask me this question again. I'm going to give you everything we know. This happened 18 months ago. My staff's involvement was over the course of minutes. My own personal involvement was probably seconds. So yeah, everybody, just chill out a little bit, right? Well, no. Because we're talking about subverting democracy. We're talking about potential violations of the Electoral Vote Act. We're talking about criminal conspiracy, possibly. We're not just going to relax. We're not just going to say, oh, you're right, total nothing burger, man. I didn't know what I was delivering in this package to the mafia. Yeah, that excuse doesn't ever work for anyone. Literally ever, Ron. So again, as I've said, the first time you came out with your excuse and said, oh no, it was just my staff who did this. I didn't even know what was in the package. You may want to work on that defense, may want to fine tune it a bit, because there is a very good chance as this moves forward that you might have to be giving that defense in a court of law. And finally, today, again, a little bit more about these hearings, but I'm sorry, folks, it's the biggest news in the country right now. Fox News. Fox News has, of course, after they decided to not air the first hearing and then lost a bunch of viewers to other networks, decided they're going to start running them, and they have been. And here's what's remarkable. You have hosts on that network that have finally started to open their eyes and realize, oh my God, this looks bad. Neil Cavuto has come out and admitted this looks really bad for Donald Trump. And Martha McCallum this week said that it was, quote, stunning that there was such an amazing lack of evidence to any of Donald Trump's claims of voter fraud. Let me read the statement that she said on the air on Fox News this week. It will be extremely useful in coming campaigns, especially the presidential, when you look back at what we have in terms of the Mike Pence part of all this. So it is a political discussion. It is very compelling, and the lack of evidence is the huge, stunning, clear moment here where these people are saying, look, I supported you. Please give me something to work with. And it simply doesn't materialize. Now, to be honest, Martha, if you actually watched any other network other than your own, you wouldn't be stunned by any of it. Like, that's the funniest part of all this. She's like, oh my God, this is stunning how there's no evidence. No, it's not. It's not stunning to any of us at all that have been paying attention to this, because there's never been any evidence. Even when, by the way, Republicans have had the opportunity to provide evidence, they have failed to do it. I mean, hell, Mike Lindell, CEO of MyPillow, actually has another little cyber symposium type thing coming up in a couple weeks where he says, this time I'm going to give you all the evidence, all of it, every bit of it. Oh, really? Just like you promised us last August? Just like you promised us over the Thanksgiving break? You're holding these cyber symposiums. You swear up and down you have all this evidence. And then, gosh darn it, when it comes down to it, you always just forget to give it to us. Whoops, right? Rudy Giuliani, same thing. Claims to have all this evidence. Heck, the dude even claims to have the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop, or at least he claimed at one point he did. Nothing. Nothing at all. Huh. And Martha MacCallum is stunned by this, that there is no evidence to back any of this up. How are you even stunned? Okay, even if these people who claim to have had it don't turn it over, how can you be stunned when we have had recounts, we have had audits, we have had signature verification, we have had every possible thing to look into every possible election, and nothing materialized? None of this is stunning. None of this is shocking. All you had to do, Martha, which I'm glad you're doing it now, but it'd been great if you'd done it a year and a half ago, all you had to do was open your eyes. Listen, that's all the time we have for today. We have a wonderful members bonus show coming up today. Lauren Boebert, got a lot of more trouble with her coming up. We also have Juul being banned by the FDA. But hey, if you want more from me, Farron Cousins, find me on YouTube, youtube.com/TheRingOfFire, youtube.com/Farron Balanced. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Farron Balanced. Thank you so much for David for letting me fill in. Bonus show coming up shortly. This is the David Pakman Show. Thank you for watching.